I think when somebody is beginning to start to study complex adaptive systems, what they have to recognize is that the context and the scale of what you're studying becomes very important. Initially, complex adaptive systems are sometimes described in terms of mathematical equations and fractals, and so you have to master a vocabulary, but you also have to understand that there is a scale of complexity. So for example, what goes on in the quantum world and what goes on in the molecular world and what might go on in an ecological environment and what might go on in a system where there are humans and human relationships becomes an important distinction. So for example, I know many physicians study the complexity of heart rate, heart rhythms and variability in heart rate and heart rhythms over time. Well, that's a physiological perspective or a framing. There are other people who study complexity in terms of the ecology and the oceans and the warming. That's a perspective, a framing. And I think what happens sometimes is learning across contexts becomes difficult, because if you believe that it is ultimately a mathematical derivative, that might turn you off if you are more interested in framing perspectives about humans and relationships and communication patterns. There is a theorist, Ralph Stacey, who's very big into complexity, and he talks about complex responsive processes in organizations and creativity in organizations. And he really relates it more to the communication process that goes on between individuals in terms of the evolution and the development of social networks and learning communities. And that resonates probably more with nurses than some of the fundamental mathematical models that the complexity is mapped onto. So just appreciating, I think, the difference in language, the difference in context, and the difference in scales probably would be a good warning for anybody to kind of, before they went into complexity theory, because there's also some mathematical models and engineering principles involved in complexity, and so it can be applied in so many different contexts. You just have to kind of figure out what level you're going to operate in and how you're going to frame the situation, and then use some of the complexity principles to organize your thinking around that.